Alright, so we're back reading more of the Gorillaz cartoon band interviews, and this is the one that was for Warp Magazine. Interview with Gorillaz, being born and dying in Calcutta. How must the world be so that even a cartoon band has to question their concepts about life and death? That is The Mountain, the ninth studio work of the project made up of 2D, Noodle, Murdoc, and Russel, recorded practically entirely from India. Just like the Beatles, when they met the guru Maharishi Mahesh Yogi for Gorillaz, having made this trip represents a before and after in their career, and in the context of the release of this material, we linked up 14,700 kilometers away to talk with them. We'll start with the questions for 2D. Gorillaz have always recorded their albums in unusual places, but for The Mountain, they chose a remote and foreign one, from their Western life to one like India. What surprised you most about that place? 2D said, anything you don't know may seem strange, but after a while it becomes normal, like when we record a song in space or at the bottom of the sea. When you get home, you think, this is weird. Why isn't everything floating? Then Warp said, for Gorillaz, collaborating with other artists in the studio is normal, but this time, they worked with musicians from very diverse cultures and languages. What was the process of explaining the concept of this album to you so that everyone was on the same page? 2D said, I know it is cliche to say that music is a universal language, but to a certain extent it is true. And on this album, we were able to verify it. Although sometimes you can't even get across 3 words to someone because your language has nothing to do with that person's, but just turn on the instruments, play some chords, and people begin to join in naturally. When you make a record, it's the only thing you need. Then Warp said, in The Mountain, the theme of death is very important. As an animated, multidimensional character, how do you perceive the way humans experience the dying process? 2D said, a kind man named David once told me that death is not the end. That helps me understand them. However, sometimes I think you yourselves forget. And then they brought the questions to Noodle. In The Mountain we hear many languages. What was the process of learning them to write the songs like? Noodle said, we are only guests in those languages, but I learned a cool phrase in Hindi. Nachna jan angan tedha. If you don't know how to dance, it's the track's fault. It's like saying, there are things in the world that get out of our hands, but that doesn't mean you have to stop living. Just do the best you can with what you have and move on. Then Warp asked, Gorillaz has 25 years of history. How much do your approach of creating records has changed over all this time? Noodle said the tools change, but we try to do what we've always done. Follow unexplored paths and explore things that perhaps should be left alone. Good things often come up, and also horrible things. But that's why I have a flamethrower under the bed. I learned a few wrestling moves. Then Warp said, Gorillaz have always been known as a very fun band, but in The Mountain, we hear a more spiritual and reflective version of Gorillaz. Was it intentional, or did it just develop that way as the album developed? Noodle said, each album breathes the air from wherever we are. The Mountain breathes the air of India, and I think that's what you can hear. Plus, just because something has more of a spiritual intention doesn't mean it can't be fun, don't you think? I'd also like to point out this awesome fan art by Neon Deer Drones, and they had me as like a media player background, which is pretty cool, like an old school media player. And they had the plushes, the Mud's head, and the Rise of the Ogre book. Very cool, I really like this piece. Thank you so much for making this. Stay tuned for part 2.